Hello again. This is actually one of the more important videos I've done on this channel. Um, and I posted a sort of text message on this channel, sort of alluding to conversations I'd had with Santander regarding the Collingwood Wealth Santander account, which would shock you when I went into further detail. Um, what I tend to do is, in terms of my working life, I tend to start a few hours earlier than my colleagues. Um, it's mainly not a lifestyle choice, but it's, as you know, those who follow the markets, market sensitive news seems to, well, generally gets posted around 7 o'clock. Um, and I like to be able to absorb that at the time. So I tend to sort of start earlier and finish slightly earlier. So if it looks white sunny and I'm posting a video, that's why. Here I have my colleague with me. This is my, never shown him before, my dog. He's 11 years old, Springer Spaniel. He pants a lot. He's quite needs bathing and so on and so forth. But he's a faithful companion. Um, I just showed you that for some informality. But to actually, I had a conversation with Santander about the Collingwood Wealth account, which you need to look at the previous videos and posts to get the context on that and why it's significant. And my conversations were recorded. We do that all the time. We record, um, whether it be um, research we get from Northumbria Police, Santander Council, or the local authorities, and any other financial institutions. We upload it to a secure portal, so even if we, like I suffered police state terror on the part of Northumbria Police back in November 2025 at the behest of Rachel Hudson, South Tyneside Council and the FCA. They can't get and destroy the information because we know the common pretext. They accuse you of terrorism, harassment, hate speech, and they use that to steal your devices and try to erase or surveil any sources or information you might have. But I called um, Santander, and all this was recorded. It was over about almost 2 hours. There were large intervals in between, as you can imagine, music, pianos, and stuff, whilst they were conversing because they started to realize the severity of the issues that I was raising. Um, I'm not going to post at this stage because you have to be reasonable, because the two people I spoke to from Santander initially, a chap from personal banking, then it was referred to business banking, and if you followed this channel, you understand why that is. They both tried to help. They were both reasonable, decent working people who tried to help. So it wouldn't be appropriate to publish the conversation that's been recorded and uploaded at this stage, because it potentially could embarrass people, and I don't want to do that because it's not their fault. They were actually reasonable, decent people. Shortcomings are at Santander and the wider UK financial system. So I called about the Santander account and I got through. And the first thing I ascertained is that the account is still active. The second shocking thing, which was confirmed by, sorry, there's some of the noise in motorbike, but I'll leave, from both employees, was they were unaware that this account was related to a major financial scandal relating to allegations of fraud and money laundering and a client shortfall of about £80 million, of which this account was the major vehicle of which client assets were transited through. So they were unaware of that. And actually, the second lady I spoke to on the business banking side said, "Oh, she'd done some research and noticed that the account were, the company Collingwood LLP had been dissolved. That was actually in June 24, but that was a result of compulsory strike off notice and so on and so forth. So even that far into the conversation, she wasn't aware of the significance of the conversation that we were having. And the FCA had not ever informed Santander that this account was involved in allegations pertaining to fraud and money laundering. So, the reasonable assumption obviously would be back in April 2023, the account would have been shut down immediately and frozen. So we go on. And you'll see with the emails I posted via the video and other posts what I've received from Santander. And it related to the inability to pay a standing order to Rycroft Glenton of £250 per month. Those £250 per month payments were on the FCA spreadsheet that I discussed with them during my interview in October 2023. What I can update you on is that Rycroft Glenton didn't receive any payments from the spring of 2023. So I don't know for sure, but I can deduce that they probably did the right thing and cancelled it and refused to take further payments as they backpedaled from the institution of Collingwood Wealth that I'd warned them about, and said it had been misused and potentially there was a major issue, and they, for some reason or other, didn't agree with me and carried on working with the business. So I warned them back in July 2021, as I've posted emails to that effect on this account. But they didn't receive payments from the spring of 2023. So we know that. So then I started to ask further questions, because what I said to them, because what the Santander business lady said to me, "Oh, this account had got bars placed on it." So I said, "Well, that in some ways that's quite reassuring, but we need to know when those bars were put in place, because essentially the FCA put the WealthTech in special administration in the spring of 2023. If there was a lapse between then and the bars being put in place, in theory, monies could have been shifted out of that account. And if that were the case, we would have to report that as a potential financial crime." So I made that point to her. And she was scuttling between her legal department. Clearly they wouldn't talk to me because prejudice and legal departments and all that. But I did use some further facts. Let me start with the first. In the 19th of June 2026, £18,847.87 was transferred to the Treasury solicitor. The Treasury solicitor is effectively the solicitor to HM Treasury and the Crown and so on and so forth. That happened as a result of this being sort of Collingwood Wealth LLP being dissolved, and that's the default option. How I understood it, that the residual monies get transferred to the Treasury solicitor. At which point I informed her that, because she said to me, then you could contact them and discuss accessing this money. But I sort of informed her that neither John or I, in the way I understood it, would be entitled to those monies. Certainly not me, because I didn't work with the business from 2021, but said that likely those monies should be returned to the benefit of their WealthTech clients. And I explained the nature of the fraud, of which she was unaware of. So there's that. And I said to her, then maybe that triggered the email, bearing in mind this was June of this year, uh, that there was a shortfall to meet the £250 per month payment to Rycroft Glenton. But she said couldn't really articulate why I'd received these emails, but she said, in her opinion, Rycroft hadn't received any payments since the spring of 2023. So that's a major shortcoming of Santander. And I also sort of raised with her, but not criticism of her, because you've got to remember this is a lady trying her best. I'm not trying to cause her distress. I don't believe that in doing that. It's not fair. But I said to her, your bank, not you, I believe have failed because this bank account has been used and in an inappropriate way. You've seen sort of tens of millions of pounds transfer into other accounts linked to John, that Vibe, for instance, relating to the lofts. And I posted a sort of a newspaper article covering how the Lost nightclub was financed. And really, it's not unreasonable to expect a bank of your size and sophistication to have picked up suspicious transactions and to have done something about this. And then, she was fairly passive on that. And, there's not really much of an argument to state. Clearly, Santander failed on their anti-money laundering credentials. So we ascertained that. I then sort of said, well, you talk about borrowers being put on the account, because she said, well, nothing can happen on this account now. There's obviously nothing in it, apart from that bit that's been transferred to the benefit of the Treasury. Now, perhaps we should ask John Healy, but it still would have been Rachel Reeves at the time. She said something weird and I could see that she was shuttling between me and the legal department. The legal department were clearly getting quite uncomfortable because it was taking longer to answer my questions. She was the intermediate. Lawyers are quite cowardly. They won't face direct questions. They say we'll only do it via legal professionals. You know why that is. So I kind of said to her, well, when were these bars applied? Because there could be a problem here. And she said the bars were applied in September 23 and November 23. So then I said, well, that's weird, because one would assume if you put a bar on on an account, that's a bar. So that's kind of like universal. So I said, well, why is there 2 dates? Because is one temporary and the other permanent, or is one partial and the other more comprehensive? Logical question. So she then shuttled back to the legal team. They started giving her, I can imagine, quite defensive actions, and started saying, well, we're going to need to investigate this because we don't know. I can't give you an answer to that question, which is quite extraordinary when you consider it, isn't it? Because we have an account that's linked to a major financial scandal where there's allegations of fraud and money laundering, that they never ever received a call from the FCA saying, shut this down, do you understand what this has been involved in? This was the same account that was discussed with me in my interview in October 2023. That's still active, although subject to bars. They can't tell me why these bars were put on in 2 different months, what that significance of that was. And I sort of explained to them, and I sort of covered it off by saying, look, if there is movement, so I don't know, someone else has operated this account and moved money out of it between April 2023 and the first bar of 2023 in September, and maybe the second bar in November 2023, we need to collectively, i.e. Santander and myself, well, more them, because I didn't even link to Collingwood Wealth at that time, you need to report that as a potential financial crime. And she sort of said, well, I can't tell you when that's happened. I have to now liaise with my legal team. So what I'm trying to do here is give you some context of how slack the system is, how in, unimaginably incompetent the FCA are, and why it's significant that I've really repeated and repeated and repeated how this conflicted regulator prosecutor model fails, and it leads to the perpetuation of incompetence and a lack of accountability to address that incompetence. This is a real conversation. It's logged, recorded, and stowed. I have not published it at this stage because I don't think it's fair on the two people at Santander who tried their best to help me. But I hope it gives you a flavour for what I've tried to identify on this account and why I think it's important, and really why I've suffered the police state terror I have. When I've drilled into this, I drilled into the UK's child trading model. I drilled into how easy it is to launder money through the UK, and the shortcomings of this smaller companies exemption and micro accounts and so on and so forth. And I've got a lot more to come for that in terms of how this happens under the nose of key institutions. So that's it for now. Hope you found this interesting. Sorry, and it's goodbye. Come on, Tommy, stand up. I think he's got himself tangled up. So anyway, it's goodbye from us. And yeah, I've made this a bit more impersonal, sorry, because sometimes that adds a bit of context. But take care. Bye.